MTG Ownage.
Hey guys, it's your boy Matt with MTG Ownage. People always say that at the beginning of their videos. I want to do an update on my Rosheen Meanderer deck, X Spells deck. I did one a couple years ago. This is one of my original commander decks. I made two decks first, and this was one of them. I was enamored by just this. Anyway, there's a link below to a Mox field of this deck, and it's called You Breast Believe It, and you could probably imagine why. But I'm going to go through some cards and explain why they're in here and why I chose for them to be in here, because this deck has matured and is probably a bit better than it was from last video. I'm going to flip through them quickly, but I'm not going to talk about like numbers of anything or like basic lands or whatever, because you can just look at the list. Okay, Commune with Lava. This might be, I gotta test the new red one that's actually in Neon Dynasty. I'm not sure if it's as good or better, but that one is cheaper and has more options. But Commune is really good because, well, you'll kind of see later once we get to some more cards, but there comes a point in this deck where you have hundreds of mana. There's no infinite in here. I took all the infinite out, so this is actually specifically a non-infinite version, because there is an infinite version where you can put, you know, cards that go infinite mana, but there's no infinite mana in this right now, and I'm very proud of that because I can play it in casual groups and just smash them. Anyway, and then say, I don't have any infinite, I'm cool, guys. Or what? No, I'm just kidding. But that's another topic. Alright, yeah, so there's a point where you have tons of mana and you just need the right option to kind of close out the game, and this is perfect. And you can also play it at the end of your opponent's turn or during your opponent's turn, and it still says until the end of your next turn. So that's the best way to do it because you get to untap with all the stuff. But it really varies. You can do it for a small amount to just hit land drops, but usually you want to get, you know, just you can get your board advantage. Mossfire Valley. This is actually an important land because it's tap for 2. We do have some doublers in here, and yeah, you pay 1 and you get 2, and it just seems like you advance 1. But when you get a tripler with this, like we'll see it later, this actually turns into 6 mana. So it's actually quite relevant, these things that tap for 2 that normally aren't. This is a great new land. Rockfall Vale, you gotta have it. Plain Mountain's not going to talk about those. Turn of the Wild Speaker's awesome. It's kind of in the same way as Commune Lava. I mean, you just needed to get a ton of cards and sometimes even close out the game with a buff. Just such a great card. A little expensive on the CMC, but you can at least use it with your commander and get at least 4 cards, like the majority of the time. But a lot of times you're going to be getting 5 to 20 cards or some insane amount with that. So it's really, really quite good. Valaget, of course, you know, drop it early if you need to, but also getting stuff back. Super great card. Chandra, Torch of Defiance. I pretty much left the Planeswalkers in here that can produce mana. She is so good. Well, you probably already know she's really good because this is one of the best Chandras. But she can give you mana or she can give you a new card. So, like, being able to draw or mana is just such great options. And her -3 is even really good. You can just nuke something. I've never ulted her. Usually you're just mana or a card or nuke something that you need to get off the board. But even if you can get this emblem, it's also a bomb. She's just one of the best Planeswalkers. There's no way she's ever coming out Command Tower, because why not? Terror of the Peaks made its way into the deck. It's just really good when you play a big X Hydra or something. Yeah, he's just really strong, particularly in this deck. Fractal Harness, this is kind of a new one I've been trying out. I'm still not sold on this, to be honest, but basically I think it's better than most of the X Hydras in general because it's just more versatile. Like, you can play it cheap and just equip it, or you can play it big and get that big old fractal. Comes out with an X fractal and already attached, and if the fractal dies you can attach to something else and it doubles the number. Yeah, it's kind of like a colonial hydra, except it's an equipment. I love the card. I still haven't seen it go off and do anything crazy in any games, but in theory it really could. Just a Bird's Paradise there, why not? Most of the mana dorks in here are 1 cost at this point. Next Plumation. Okay, so this is the guy that says if you tap a permanent for mana, it produces 3 times that much. So that's where lands like this are important, because you pay 1, you normally tap it for 2, or, you know, all your other lands are tapping for 3. This one taps for 6, so it's just really interesting with Nyx Bloom to get you to the next level. Toski made its way into the deck because Toski's amazing. This deck, for a while, that old way I had it, was kind of having problems with running out of cards often. So I just kept adding more card draw, and Toski's just kind of a no-brainer. So good. Shatter Skull Smashing, because of course, just play it early if you need to, but if you draw it late, it's great too. Game Trail, I don't care for this card to be honest, but it's in here. I don't like that particular duel that much because it just often comes in tapped in Land War. Unbound Flourishing, this has held its place. It's almost modal. Like, you don't really think about it when you first read it, but yeah, everything, all your permanents just have double. Whenever you cast a permanent spell, it contains X, double the value of X, so all the hydras or any permanent you're bringing out, and there's a few of them, you'll see them. But instants and sorceries, it actually copies the spell. It doesn't double the X, it just makes another copy of the spell, which is so good when people are countering and stuff, because you're like, now you got to counter 2 of them. So I love the card. I think this card is so great in this deck. Roiling Earthquake, one of the few X spells for this cheap, like 1 in X, that hits everything except for stuff. It hits all creatures and all players, except for stuff with horsemanship, but like nothing has that, so it's very rare. It doesn't hit what that one guy, Sun Quan, it like hits everything else in the game, so it's the best Earthquake. It's in here instead of Earthquake or Hurricane or anything, it's just better. Alright, Xenagos, this guy also adds mana, and he does it in the Gaia's Cradle style, so you often find yourself with quite a few creatures on the board, so that his +1 can add like a lot. Sometimes it's really nice, and if you really need creatures, you can just make satyrs. I don't know. I've questioned putting him in or not. You know, I always go back and forth, but he seems to be okay. Symbiosis, just a land. I don't know if this belongs in the deck or not. I feel like sometimes it's great, but 99% of the time it's a land, and I pay 3 life, and I'm mad, and I wish it was just a forest. All right, well, forest, yep. Primordial Hydra, this is the one you gotta have if any. This is like the best Hydra. You can just bring it out early and just watch it stack up, and people either gotta take care of it or it's gonna kill them, because once it has 10 or more counters, it has trample, and they just double every turn, so pretty insane. Lightning Greaves, gotta protect your boys, get that haste. Colonial Hydra is amazing. When it attacks, it doubles the number of counters on each creature you control. So I guess, you know, I was saying the equipment earlier was kind of like it, but actually this does it for all your creatures. That equipment just does it for the one, I think. Actually, let me go back and read that, because actually I'm not sure now. Double the number of counters on it. Yeah, this just does it for the one creature. So Colonial Hydra does it for everything, which is amazing. Questing Beast. I've gone back and forth on this guy too. Just ultimately, look at that wall of text, man. For 4 mana, 4/4 with a wall of text. Absolute wall of text. But the most important thing is, you know, sometimes with this deck, people will see what you're doing, you're trampling over them, and they get like, they just start fogging. They find a fog cycle. And he says, combat damage that would be prevented by creatures you control can't be prevented. So he stops fogs, and that's the main reason I kept him in here. Like, everything else is great, but it doesn't really synergize with the X or drawing cards, but he just gets through fog, which sometimes is exactly what you need to close out the game. Alright, Heroic Intervention, pretty much your one counter spell, anti-board wipe in the deck. There's not too many of them. Unnatural Growth, this thing is amazing. This is flippin' amazing. This is like always GG pretty much. You don't even need many creatures. There's 1 or 2 creatures with things in this. Even with just Rosheen, you can often just get to 20 or 21 commander damage at least, just with this Unnatural Growth. This card is insane. This card is crazy. It's too good. Garuk, he untaps 2 lands, which is really, really good. Rarely do anything else other than that. Mostly just untap lands. Yeah, because once you have triple mana or double mana or something, and you can untap 2 lands, he just pays for himself, and he's just a no-brainer. And later he can overrun your whole team, which is sometimes quite relevant to close it out. And if you really got nothing else going on, you can at least make a beast. He's really strong. He's really good. There's a reason he's one of the best Planeswalkers. Harmonize. I've liked this card. I considered taking it out, but every time I draw it, I love it. It just feels good. Those 3 cards are so frequently what you need in this deck, because as you might have seen, you get tons of mana with this deck. So sometimes your hand is just gone so quick in 1 turn, and you're just like, I just need anything to draw more cards. That happens very frequently, and Harmonize is the spot. And even if you play it early, like, I don't know, sometimes you ramp a bit and you can play this turn 2 or 3, that's also okay. And that's still really nice, keeps you going. Kodama's Reach, yeah, no-brainer. For a while I was using like some of the 4 casting costs search up lands, but I found that this one was very sufficient and nice. Hunter's Insight, kind of a no-brainer. It just slaps cards into your hand. Yeah, you gotta use it carefully. Sometimes you can 2-for-1 you, but most of the time you're good. Alright, Scavenging Ooze. Now this is kind of an odd one, doesn't really synergize with X, but this deck has like no ways of dealing with graveyards at all. So Scavenging Ooze is one way, and it's the +1/+1 counters, which you might have noticed there's a little bit of synergy with. So he seems to fit in here really good, and plus, just look at him. He beats out of a trash can. Does it get any better than that? So yeah, it just helps shut off graveyard shenanigans. Nice creature. He's often, if nothing else, he's removal bait, because that guy playing graveyard shenanigans has got to be like, I gotta get rid of that Scavenging Ooze, which means one of your other big boys gets through later because they had to deal with your Ooze. So Ooze is just such a great card. Green Suds Zenith, this is a no-brainer, really. Like, what you get with this, pretty much every time, if you can, is you get Nyx Plumation, like almost every time. So you want to hit 7. But there's some other things you might get, but and we'll talk about them, you'll see them. But most of the time you just want to get your mana tripler with this. Or if you're stuck with like 2 mana, 3 mana, you can grab an elf or something. So it's just really awesome. And it shuffles back in, so you're probably going to get it later. But you probably already know that. That card's like busted. Kessig Wolfrun, oh my goodness, this closes out games. Sometimes all you need is a bunch of mana and Rosheen and Kessig, and you're like, commander damage, buddy, boom! And yeah, so Kessig Wolfrun is just amazing in this deck. You gotta have it. Magus of the Candelabra, this card is amazing. Now, if I had unlimited money, I would get the actual Candelabra of Tawnos, I think it is. It's like $1,000 card, but it's a little bit better than this even. But this is basically the Candelabra of Tawnos on a creature. You probably already know that, or maybe you don't. But anyway, this card's like $1 or something. It's really cheap, and the Candelabra is like $1,000. But if I could, I'd play the Candelabra. But this is super good because, well, X untap X lands, which is not, normally a huge deal. But when they add triple mana, this is just like a ton mana. And you can only use Rosheen's mana for X, but you can pump it into this and tap your lands, and now you can use it for anything. Really great. Really, really good. Amazing here. It's a Gaia's Cradle, Growing Rights of Itlamok. You probably know what it is. It flips into a Gaia's Cradle, basically, or a slightly better version. So, yeah, I don't know if this card honestly belongs. You just often find yourself with a pretty big board state with this deck, so it's kind of perfect for that, and it helps you get a creature. Stomping Ground, of course, Augur of Autumn, I love this card. There's about, I think, 29 creatures in this deck, and 34 lands, so it's pretty frequent that the land or a creature is going to be on top, and it's basically card advantage, which this deck needs severely. Nature's Lore, the best turn 2 play in the deck, probably. Okina, Temple of the Grandfathers, this is rarely actually relevant, but sometimes, you can use it on anybody's legendary. So even if your opponents are fighting, sometimes it's kind of nice, but it's kind of whatever, really. It could be a forest, it's not that big of a deal. I rarely actually use that ability. Carpet of Flowers, yeah, it's just nice ramp. You probably know what it does already. So it's got to be in there pretty much. Ink Moth, now this is kind of an odd one, but it's Infect, and this is another thing that you can just close out the game with, because, you get this up big with Kessig Wolfrun with Ink Moth. If you got enough X to pump into it. It's just another way to close out the game if you're in a pinch. I don't know if this really belongs, but I feel like it's going to have a place. Walking Ballista, the double X, you know what it does. It's just really great removal, basically. You just bring them out and ping everything you need to ping and have fun from there. And he doubles with Colonial Hydra and stuff, and, he works with a lot of the other X stuff. The Fractal Harness on him would be cool. Yeah, he's great. And being able to cast him with your commander is always fun. This is another one of those lands that, once you get triple mana, taps for a ton more. So this is a clutch land that you have to have if you're playing this deck, with Nyx Bloom Ancient, specifically. Red Elemental Blast, yeah, one of your few ways to stop people from countering your stuff. So good. Blue's often, hard to deal with. Xenagos is amazing because you know what he does. Xenagos is old school. The double power haste is huge in this deck because, sometimes you're already doubling up with things like that unnatural growth. Yeah, unnatural growth with Xenagos becomes absolutely insane because you can order the triggers, and I guess it doesn't even matter what you order them. But if you do like Xenagos first and then Unnatural Growth, that's basically like, yeah, double it, and then double it again. And it's like, whoa, okay, this one's hitting for 40 some damage. Can you survive that? Probably not, especially if it's got Trample. Alright, Forest. Sheltered Thicket, you know, nice. Sometimes you just want to cycle that bad boy, so it's good. And also Mountain Forest, so you can search it up with things that look for forest. Jessica's Will, yes. Busted. Needs banned? No, it doesn't need banned, it's fine. The old school Big Vorinclex, you can search him up if your Nyx Bloom is gone, but he's a little more. And yeah, people hate him, but he's not actually as good because he just says your lands tap for an additional, so he's not as good as Nyx Bloom. And there's no double or triple on him. I know you can't read this one, but you'd have to look him up, I guess. So he's not as good as Nyx Bloom, but he does shut down your opponents, and they have to find a way to deal with him or it's a problem. Orcus Settlers, yeah, people hate when you destroy their lands, but the reality is sometimes people have lands that are a real problem, especially stuff like, what's the name, Maze of Ith and stuff. So I just wanted to have at least something that destroys lands in here, and this has X in it. And yeah, if you get a ton of mana and you get this guy haste, you can surprise people by blowing up all of their lands, which is typically, that is a game-winning scenario because they can't stop the rest of what comes after that, basically. Like they need mana to deal with all your giant creatures, so this card's kind of crazy in this deck. It's kind of like too good. The only reason I actually would take it out is because how much people complain about it, but otherwise it's actually really, really strong in this deck. Lair of the Hydra. Yeah, it's one of the new ones, and it's great. When it becomes a Hydra, you can... I don't know if it's actually that good, because in theory, like, if you're tapping Rosheen into this, like, why not just use Rosheen and leave Rosheen untapped? Because, you know, it's a 4-4, and you can make it a 4-4. So actually, I don't know if this belongs in the deck. It doesn't actually feel good. I haven't had a scenario where it was useful yet. So we'll see if Lair of the Hydra actually stays in. Alana and Alana Partners. I love this card. Now, this deck doesn't have a whole lot of flying, so there has been a lot of scenarios where someone's playing angels or dragons or whatever, and you get ran over by flyers. So just her having reach is kind of a big deal sometimes, and the way it pumps up your other creatures every turn is just really great. This is a really strong card, and I don't know if you also realize, but this gives haste to the creature, which is kind of insane too. So there's a lot of things, like, that's one of the things. Maybe you need a haste source. You can bring this guy out, you go to combat, you give it haste, and then you can use its ability right away. Alana and Elena. It's basically like Xenagos. Xenagos does a very similar thing, gives haste, except Xenagos doubles temporarily. This is actual counters based on her power. So if you pump her up, this puts tons of counters on something. This card's really great. I don't think people have realized how great Alana and Elena Partners is. It's 4 mana, and you get so much power, toughness, first strike, and oh god, I'm just going to stop. Alright. Rada, Heart of Keld. Fine, you know, you get to play lands off the top of your library. That's the big deal here. She's also got first strike, so she's a really great attacker, and you can threaten. You know, you attack before you tap all your lands, and you can get through with Rada most of the time, or just she becomes insane late game. So I think this is a really strong card too that I don't think it sees enough play, but it's perfect in here. Elder Gargaroth, who even need to talk about it? This card is amazing. The life gain has won me games. The drawing cards has won me games. The having reach has won me games. The fact that it has vigilance and trample has won me. This card is insane. It has nothing to do with X, but like I said, this deck needs more card draw, and this is just a creature that balances the deck out so well. Genesis Wave, yeah, you want to get to 8. So basically, you want to put 11 mana into this. 4 of it can be from Rosheen, so it's not too bad. If you do less, that's fine. These 7's sometimes okay, but the biggest thing in here is an 8, so your ideal number is 8, and you're good to go. Actually 9, if I think about it, because Great Henge, 9 is the biggest thing, so you want to get to 9 if possible. But if you're in a pinch and it's the thing you got to do, sometimes just the lands that this ends up getting you is great, even if you got to do it for like 6 or something. But yeah, try to get to 9 basically. Great Henge, kind of a no-brainer. You know, once Rosheen's out, this is only 5 mana, but this is often, it's pretty easy to get this down to the 2 mana, and then it taps for 2 mana right away. I know it's an expensive card, but geez, it's so good in here. It's so good. And oh yeah, card draw, life gain, that's what balances out this deck. It's what it needs. Rootbound Crag, find land. Nihilith of Dire Hunt, I still need to test this out more, But it's a great card draw, and it can end up at being removal, and you can double someone's power. So yeah, you can really do some serious damage with this, and draw cards, and remove people's creatures. She's really good in here. She belongs, definitely. Polychronos, I've gone back and forth with this one, but he ends up being removal. You know, he's easy to get out there quickly and become a threat, and then you can monstrosity him and fight stuff that's in your way, and he really helps close out games. He's good. He's really good. Forest. Carclusion Forest, yep, gotta have it. Finale of Devastation. Remember, this can get stuff out of your graveyard too. Graveyard or library. So if they've killed your Nyx Bloom or whatever, you can get it with Finale. But there's other really great stuff to get with Finale. I'm going to put that aside because basically you won't see Craterhoof Behemoth in this deck. And the reason is because this is your Craterhoof Behemoth, basically. Yeah. So good. Soul Ring, of course. Why isn't it? Why wouldn't it? Banefire. This is the only X direct damage spell I actually left in here. I've tried out a bunch. I don't even feel that great. This one can't be countered, can't be prevented. So this is your kill spell. This is the one you can fire off for tons of mana and be like, I'm killing you, and they can't counter it, they can't prevent it. It's just over. Banefire. It's the one. It's so good. Alright, Fenhorn, best first turn play. Taiga, yeah, optional, I know, really expensive card. But you don't really have to have it for the deck. Sylvan Library, this I recently picked up, another kind of expensive card, but it's so good in here, you know, the card draw, you just need it. It really helps a lot. Crag, you gotta have one of these in there, they're not too bad. Castle Garenbrig, also really amazing for the doubling potential. Like, yeah, sure, you can pay 4 into it and add 6 mana, but if you have Nyx Bloom out, this adds 18 mana. 18 mana, which is just crazy. Of course, you got to play that for only creatures, but ideally you have a creature with X in its casting cost when you use this, and it's just a lot of mana. I think it just definitely belongs. It's fun. It's a good card. Reap the Past. This is way better than it seems. Pretty much every time I play this, I'll have a graveyard like, you know, maybe like this or something, and I'll just max it out. I'll be like, how many cards in my yard? 8. Reap the Past for 8. Boom, 8 cards. And it's just amazing. And they're all cards you've used previously, so they're usually really good. Yeah, this card's insane. This card's really good. I don't know if people realize it yet. I don't know if it's good in other decks, but in this deck in particular, it's really good. Ancient Tomb, Gold Border, yeah, why not? You gotta have an Ancient Tomb. Just more mana. 3 visits, yeah, great turn 2 play. There's no Moxes in here, you've noticed. I mean, obviously, if I were at an even bigger budget, I would go Moxes and stuff, but I just don't own many of them. Vorinclex, he doubles your counters. And on your... Yeah, you know what he does. He's kind of a no-brainer in here. You gotta have him if you got him. He belongs. Published Mystic, another really great card. It's just gonna buff your whole board. On her flip side, you've probably seen her. She's in Standard right now. This Wolf... It just gives all your permanents hexproof if this flips, and it puts 2+1/+1 counters on each creature you control when you go to combat. Or, what is it, during combat? Yeah, beginning of combat, okay. So, yeah, if you get a chance to order these combat triggers, you put this one on the stack first, or last, so that it happens first, and boom, you know. Really great, really hard to deal with because of the hexproof. I think this card is broken right now, just kind of busted, too good. Beast Within, destroying permanent, no-brainer, you gotta have in every green deck. Court of Calling, a really great way to get your specific big boys, usually your mana tripler, out there onto the board, and you can do it at instant speed, so good. Savala, taps for 1,000,000 mana, draws you cards. What's not to love? It belongs in the deck. Cinderglade. This land drives me crazy. I hate this land. Love-hate. At least you can search it up, but like, you gotta have 2 more basic lands. The amount of times that you're at like turn 6 or 7 and you don't have 2 basics because you're getting all your fancy lands, it just annoys me when this comes into play tapped on like turn 6 or 7, but it's in here for now. I don't know, I need to find a better one. Alright, Domri and Arcabolus, yeah, they're really great. You know, it's mostly just ramp, but it also buffs your guys, and it's got fight. You know Domri, this is the best Domri. Definitely belongs in the deck, and creature spells you can't control can't be countered is always nice too. But yeah, that's just a really good one. Pyroblast, you gotta have it. Mountain, Wooded Foothills, because why not? Titanial Flute, this is a card I'm trying out, but it's, you know, X, search for X. You can pay 2 into this and get like some of your hydras and stuff, or pay 0 into it and get Walking Ballista. Yeah, this card I think is really good. I mean, it's a little steep on the initial cost, but if people don't get rid of it, you'll just be able to get stuff all game and have no problems keeping up. Cultivate, Yeah, it's super good. Play it as early as you can. Doubling cube. Do we even need to say anything about this? Once you get to 8 mana, this starts becoming a mana rock. Once you get to 9 mana, it becomes crazy. Once you get to like 20 mana, it's just like, oh my god, we're all dead. Doubling cube is crazy in this deck. It is nuts, as you can probably imagine. It's one of those things where it's like, okay, we have a lot of mana, but I think we'll be okay. Doubling cube's like, now you've got a lot of mana, and we're not going to be okay. The Banefire's coming, and it's going to hurt. Guardian Project, this card is way better than I originally thought. It draws you so many cards. It's basically like having another Great Henge out there, as far as just the card draw. Oh, it's so many cards. I love it. And it is non-token, so like any of my 29 creatures, so great. We got a couple new ones. Rhythm of the Wild, I think this is really good. They can't be countered is awesome. Creatures can't be countered. And you can give them haste or +1/+1, whatever's better for you. Max the Daredevil out of a recent Secret Lair. This guy is really cool in here because he does exactly what you want. Yeah, he's 3 mana, he's 3/2, he's got haste, which is fine. But whenever you cast your second spell, untap target creature, then investigate. That's amazing in this deck. You can untap Rosheen and get even more mana, or you can untap, I don't know, something you've attacked with, but as if the untap wasn't enough, you get to investigate. And this deck severely runs out of cards because you can just blow out your hand real quick with all the mana you get. This investigate is clutch because you can just draw more cards with it, and you often just need that. So Max is, I think, a really nice spot in this deck in particular. And there's always something on tap, whether it's only creatures. I wish it could do artifacts or lands too, that would be even better, but creatures is good enough because usually you have Rosheen. You often have an elf or something, or you often have just something you want to keep up as a blocker. But the investigate, that really, if it was just untapped creature, I probably wouldn't put it in the deck, but the investigate on top of it is so good, so good. I think he's really good in this deck. Swiftfoot Boots, different language, but you know what it does. Stonecoil Serpent, yeah, there's one of the, it could be 0, you could search it up for 0 with the Titanium Flute. This thing's amazing. This is like the best snake ever. Protection from multicolor is very relevant commander. It's protection from most people's commanders, and it's got reach, so if nothing else, if you're behind, you can just play this thing as big as possible. And there's a lot of people that are just like, well, can't mess with you anymore until he dies. And really good. Okay, Pathbreaker Ibex. Yeah, this is generally how you close out the game. When it attacks, creatures you control get trample +X/+X to the end of turn, where X is the greatest power among creatures you control. So when you bust this thing out, it's only a 3/3, but it doesn't matter because it becomes massive. So there's a lot of times where I'll just be like, Finale of Devastation or whatever. Pathbreaker Ibex, boom. Hit you for 4,000 and boom, it's over. Yep, Kazul's Fury is a great double face land for this deck because obviously you can just throw one of your huge creatures, but most of the time you just play it as land. And last but not least, Klauth. Oh, Klauth is crazy in this deck too. Have you read this card? Yeah, it's 7 mana, Flying Haste Dragon. When it attacks, not combat damage, on attack, add X mana in any combination of colors where X is the total power of attacking creatures. You don't lose it at the end of steps and phases. So as you can see, with things like all the doubling of power and unnatural growth, this is just going to add you so much mana. Alright, there it is. There's Rosheen with no infinite and no moxes and no 0 cast mana rocks. I love it. It's been fun to play, and that's the update. Link below if you want to see the actual list online on Moxfield. Alright, let me know what you guys think. Don't forget to leave a like, subscribe. Matt out.